Hey there, welcome back to Real Talk. I have something special and a little different for you this time. We are working on a comedy documentary, and we had comedian star Rob Schneider come on. And while we interviewed him, there was so much amazing footage, over an hour of footage, and we can't fit it into this comedy documentary, but I thought you would want to hear it all. And so we produced for you an uncut version of the entire interview. It's a little scrappy, but it's so much fun. It's absolutely hilarious, and I think you're going to enjoy it. And so go ahead, keep watching my interview, Uncut with Rob Schneider. Enjoy and let me know what you think.
This is Schneider interview, AV Colin Market, take one.
A lot of people have asked me to do this, and I said no to all of them. I just need my coffee.
Right,
I'm not.
all around, guys.
Excuse me, we're working here, people.
On how to do this.
Let's just go. Just talk to me while we're doing it. Just roll. Just roll.
Let's just start with, when you think about comedy,
Yes.
what do you think about?
I think about something outrageous and something that's you're not going to hear in your normal day life. People are so busy, and that's why I think comedy is so huge right now, and never more exciting, and never more precarious. You know, Dave Chappelle and Adam Sandler and Chris Rock and Bill Burr and Whitney Cummings and Sarah Silverman when she wants to can do like incredibly illuminating universal truths. What's happening though is that the culture is under attack. Obviously, there's an attack, as Douglas Murray talks about in his brilliant book War on the West, that we are under attack. And so you have this other thing that's happening to them where, the foundational thinking that goes in their mind is being undermined by these group of cretins and malcontents who realized that they couldn't destroy Western civilization through a revolution because capitalism actually improves people's lives. So they had to do it through education. And they've used and they've got their way, and then they've manipulated their way into academia, and then they've manipulated that because who gives a shit about academia? It doesn't really affect people's lives, and then it's moved its way into out of academia now. It's in politics, it's in the courts even. And it's all over the media, and it's 95% of this illiberal nonsense. And so what happens is these people who think this stuff's crazy, they just, I think this is nuts, but they don't have time to really work on it because they're busy with their day. And so a comedian, like a good writer, he's going to have the only difference between a good writer and everybody else, or just any writer, is they have a little bit more time to think about what's happening in their lives and their culture. And then they can write this stuff down. And then they can reflect on it and think about it a little bit more than someone who's just going on busy with their day. So anytime you have that upheaval and in the society, you're going to look for artists who speak to you, who can look at this stuff and comment on it. So you can go, yeah, I thought that was crazy, and somebody's saying it. And right now, unfortunately, you don't have that contrast of ideas anymore, whether it's, NBC's late night guy, ABC's late night guy, NBC's late night guy, or CNN. It's all this, it really is. You can interchange their jokes, and they're completely, there's no individuality. And so people come to comedy so they can hear something, because there is a void of voices that are speaking for individuality. And I want to hear it. And other people want to hear it too.
Do you think comedy is immune to the woke virus?
No. I mean, comedy's affected by what's ever happening in the culture. And also, for instance, because it is it's a commercial, it is a commercial field. You're there to be successful at it. And one of the ways to gauge your success is how much money you make, how many tickets you sell. And so, yeah, and if you have and then if you get on TV or make movies, so Hollywood does not want you to be controversial. They don't like that I'm controversial, or that I'll say things that don't necessarily jibe with what the illiberal intelligentsia is spewing.
I'm a mixed race person. In this age of diversity, they want to hire, let's have Asian people, let's have black people, let's have women, diversity, let's have diversity. So I'm Asian, but I'm not Asian enough where it can help me these days. like Rob Schneider, and like Rob Acabona Ito, you know.
And that's a problem in a commercial field because, you know, they want to do TV shows, whatever, and they want to stay away from any of that. And I get that. So yeah, I mean, it is affected. However, I think though, there's a great opportunity. I mean, there's not one show that I do anywhere in the United States, or worldwide at this point, where not every show I do is completely sold out. Why? Because they're hearing stuff they can't hear on TV. And I think it's a great opportunity. I think anytime there's a cultural dissension and anytime people feel like they're being lied to, like now, and if you're not realizing that your government has been lying to you, then you, as Bobby Kennedy says, you're not paying attention. So the great comedians, the ones who really are cultural touchstones, are the ones who are going to talk about these things and expose them. You know, my good friend Jimmy Dore was just absolutely brilliant and probably said the best thing about COVID. He said, because remember all the advertisements, remember all the stuff? And Jimmy Dore said, remember them telling you, like, don't do your own research. Don't do your own research. You mean read?
They would say, please tell me you're not going to do your own research. You've heard people say that. Please don't do your own research. You know, before COVID, doing your own research used to be called reading.
So I think there is people are waking up and calling bullshit on this.
Well, I completely agree. And I think that people are becoming more famous within the public when they're willing to make people somewhat uncomfortable or actually stare at certain things.
Yeah, I'm not there. I'm not there to make you comfortable. I am not there to make you, to reinforce your political echo chamber. If I don't get you to question it on both sides, if I don't get you to question some of this stuff, then some of your foundational thinking, that I didn't do my job.
You okay?
No, he's not mad. No, he is.
You're mad?
Yeah, good.
That's okay. You know what the cool thing about it in America is? Free speech isn't the speech you like. Nice stuff's not what needs to be protected. It's the stuff that you hate that needs protection, so that somebody like the government or you doesn't get to decide what everybody else gets to hear.
It is such an interesting time to try to do stand-up now that I think the opportunities are great. I stopped doing stand-up for 20 years because I really didn't think there was that many interesting things to fight for. And I think that the attack on Western civilization has come to a head now. And I think, I don't think it'll succeed. James Lindsay, the great, author and intellectual the guy in charge of New Discourses. It's great to hear him speak, and he's much better than I am at it. But he says that this woke cultural abomination is 12 to 18 months away from collapse. And I agree, because people are waking up to it and they're sick of it. You know, if you read the Huffington Post, which I don't recommend, but apparently you do, and you said this morning that they had some thing saying Rob Schneider, and the quote was, I love the quote. I said, I'm sick of Americans are sick of this woke bull. And they are. Enough. Adults, don't make decisions for me of what I'm supposed to laugh at, what I'm supposed to think, or don't choose that for me. You know, my favorite thing that the worst, these aren't even journalists, these are just bloggers. They said, we saw, whatever it is. We saw this movie, we saw this documentary, we saw Rob Schneider's act, so you don't have to. Oh, really? So tell us. Really? So think, please laugh for me, then eat my lunch for me, chew my food for me, because intellectually that's what they're asking you to do. They're asking you not to think. They're asking you not to make your own decisions. They're asking you to just swallow everything that we're saying.
Do you feel like something changed? Was there a moment where comedy was freer and then somehow comedy became less free?
Yeah, George Floyd. It hit a head. I mean, you had people in a culture that it was a petrol leak ready to explode. And George Floyd was the match. And as soon as that hit, and then combined with the pressure of people's locked away, people being glued to their phones, people being told what to do, people, literally being isolated. It created I think what what global elites want to create, fear. And I think, fear in every sense of the word, fear for your own personal safety, fear for your career, fear for your ability to continue to take care of your family, fear of death from this disease that they said was, 4 times more dangerous. And it turned out to be just like the normal flu. If you were old and I think over 70% of the people who passed away were either elderly or very, obese. And they lied, and they continued to lie. And so it created this thing where people clung, people did become susceptible to fear at that time. And then they were manipulated as if, as Douglas Murray says in his book, War in the West, sorry, things in the United States with race have never been better. And they present it like it's never been worse.
How did the lockdowns impact comedians then?
Well, I mean, interestingly, I knew it was bullshit because I know that, this, that the whole vaccine pharma industry is to make money. It doesn't care two shits about health. If you just go to GlaxoSmithKline, or you go to Merck, or you go to Pfizer, and you look at their business thing for people, for investors, and they go, we want cradle to grave drugs. Not for people's health, but for their for their bottom line. It was so overdone. It was so authoritarian that enough people, where it's like 80 million Americans said, bullshit, we're not taking those shots. You're not going to tell us what to do. You're not going to close our bed. We're not buying it. You're not, and you're certainly not taking our guns. And then we are able for the first time in my lifetime to peek behind the curtain and see the great Oz. And you know what? It's just a fucking guy back there and manipulating all this shit. And the American public saw that. If you still believe that masks work, if you still believe that the COVID-19 vaccine stopped you from getting the virus, if you still believe that, then I can't help you. Then don't come see my show, please, because your mind is closed and you have to work on you have some other problems. You still have a daddy complex. You still need people to think for you and make decisions for you. And there is nothing we could do for you. There isn't. You're a fanatical person. You are, whether you believe it or not, you are a fundamentalist. You have a closed system of thought where you will not allow new ideas to come in. You have a fixed idea, and that's fundamentalism, whether it's a religious fundamentalism or whether it happens to be some political ideological fundamentalism. You are gone.
Are you allowed to say these truthful, common sense things in places like Hollywood or comedy clubs? Like, what happens?
Well,
maybe you're famous and you can get away with it, but like,
I can get away with it, and I can say what I want. But at the same time, you have to be judicious. I mean, at the same time, you know that, you will be a target if you're going against the status quo. If you're going against, you have to understand, I think it's become pretty obvious now that 95% of academia is no longer teaching. They are creating, they're just churning out, instead of self-thinking students who can think critically to understand the world, what universities are doing now in academia is just churning out advocates to one political form of thought, to one ideology, this illiberal, dogma. And that is what their creation is. And that is a problem, because these are the people, the future leaders and thinkers, and they're not thinking and they're not leading. They're just being told what to do and they're just following. So, I mean, but as far as me, I don't feel like I am not beholden to any particular ideology, but I want to question the stuff that I think is dogmatic. To me, it's like allowing men to compete against women in sports, and attacking women and women's rights and safe spaces. And also, this child mutilation, which hopefully is coming to an end soon, because it affects mostly women, young, impressionable women. These women these are young women that are 13 years old. Just 24 months ago, were still believing in the tooth fairy and Santa Claus. Somehow these 14-year-olds who can't vote, can't get a tattoo, can't drive, can't own a gun, can't fight for their country, somehow they're allowed to make decisions to permanently mutilate and surgically allow these monsters to make them infertile and make them, but it's 20 years later or 5 years later, which is happening a lot. These detransitioners, it's taking away their opportunity to really enjoy womanhood, breastfeeding their child, or even making them infertile. And it's all done by using people's goodwill. It's like, no, we got to protect these people. Yeah, but not at the expense of women. No, you can live your life. You can have your freedom, but you can't take away women's rights. If they really call puberty blockers what they are, the left loves to like reframe an argument, and they go like, it's a puberty blocker. Okay, what is it really? Well, it's a repurposed castration drug for prisoners. Oh, okay. But we have them. We don't want to waste them. Let's give them to children who are confused. They're confused during puberty. This is just insanity. So you have somebody like Ayaan Hirsi Ali, should be a hero. Here, this woman escaped Somalia, suffered the abuses of this terrible fanatical religion, this regime of this religion, and escaped, went to Europe, went to the Netherlands, and became a legislator. She was elected. And her friend was brutally murdered by the Islamic fundamentalists. And she had to escape there because they just, they had the most liberal immigration in Europe was the Netherlands at that time. And they, they're not as liberal anymore. Why? Because crazy people are going in there, fanatical people who would murder people in the street, like what happened to Theo Van Gogh, the friend of Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She comes over here, and instead of being a hero for feminism and for other women, she's attacked. Why? Because she has the audacity to critique the religion that had mutilated her as a child and that holds women in contempt. And so instead of, they're just like, that's Islamophobic. No, it isn't. She knows this religion more than you. She suffered from it. Let's listen to her. And that's the problem with silencing those. And she's a perfect example of what should be raised up in the cultural consciousness as a hero for women. And instead of that, she is derided by people who know nothing about Islam. Thankfully, this has created like a vacuum for comedians to fill. And hopefully they'll talk about some of this stuff and get people back to get our culture, which is the pendulum, when you thought it couldn't swing out anymore, it's still swinging. But if you can get them to realize these things, get them back to a normal swing so that they're not intellectually, so their lives aren't swinging out. So women don't have to worry about changing in the janitor's closet because there's a dude in their locker room. So once people realize, oh, that's not fair. Well, it's presented like, they're all going to kill themselves if they don't get a chance to show their dick in a locker room. No, I'm sorry. You don't get to make that argument because it's not factually true. And if you're going to make that argument, then you got to make the argument for to the people who did transition and they killed themselves. So if you don't want to bring that in, then bullshit. I call bullshit on that argument. And that's the kind of stuff that I think, as a comedian, you got to go there to get laughs. And I think that it's so ridiculous that you can and should talk about these things. Let the audience decide, but bring it up. Let them decide for themselves. And then I think, people, when they do come to my shows, I think they walk out and they go like this. Okay, I thought it was just me. But people can walk out and they just like, oof, how was that? It's a group together thinking about something and getting the question and saying, I thought this was crazy. And it is crazy. It is crazy.
They went full on attack on you when you made jokes about the LGBTQA, all the letters of the alphabet.
Well, what's happening?
Any of you guys, when you...
Well, no, what's happening is
I'll often joke about them.
Look, I love everybody. But don't make up this, you can't just create this new group of untouchables that what is happening with their experience and their life has to take that has to take the focus, and this has to take precedent over everybody else. Women's rights must be trampled because of this new group. And it's just another form of authoritarianism in the guise of tolerance, in the guise of kindness. It's like, we have to do this. It's the best thing for you. No, we have to take these people. You have to isolate yourself for grandma. It's just, now you have to take a back seat. I'm sorry, but you're going to lose your position, your scholarship because of this dude, because he can't win against boys. So, and he needs to feel like a winner. So you lose your scholarship. So it's a thing that, like, if you bring it up, they want to attack you because they don't have a debate. They really cannot express how that's okay. So the only thing they can do is label you as a crazy person, as a right winger, as a whatever. And it's like, you know what? I'm sorry. Let's debate. Let's talk about it. But they won't. They'll just label you as a anti-vaxxer, and I love that term, anti-vaxxer. As if, if you have problems with the new Boeing 737 Max, and you should have a problem because they're crashing and pieces of the plane are falling off. And maybe it's having to do with the fact that they're having diversity now at their corporation. Instead of the most qualified people working on the plane and flying those planes, they want diversity. And hey, diversity is dangerous, as you're seeing. But if you say that there might be a question with the new Boeing 737, nobody is going to label you as an anti-planer. You're an anti-plane guy. No, you're just asking questions. So if but they want to label you, and just so they don't have to talk about it. And so this way the, pharmaceutical industry can just continue to have free reign as like the 85% paying for all media on all platforms. Pharma, 85% in a non-election year. And there's only 2 countries that allow straight to consumer advertisements, and it's New Zealand and America. Every other country goes, that's fucking crazy. It is crazy, but it allows here because that's how powerful the pharmaceutical industry is. But if you question, hey, I had 3 vaccines when I was a kid, and what's the number now? 72 doses of 16 different vaccines before the age of 6. Why? Because it's evergreen. They can make money. It doesn't go generic. So they're always going to make money. And if anything goes wrong, they can't sue. They have liability. But if you question any of that, instead of just saying, you've got some valid questions, or say, well, what are those questions, and talk about it, they just label you like an anti-vaxxer. So, excuse me? Hey, if some girl doesn't want to have sex with some guy, that doesn't make her anti-dick. It just makes her anti-your dick.
Rob, what do you think about apologies?
Oh, well, I think apologies are definitely in order. You step on somebody's toe, if you hit their car in the parking lot, if you don't hold the door open for your lady, biological lady, but for jokes, you. I'm not apologizing to anybody for anything. These are jokes. You're an adult. You can decide to laugh at it or whatever. And if you pay to come see me and you're insulted, do your research. That's on you. Look me up. If you think I might say something objectionable, that's my job.
She said this last week. Hillary Clinton said, I always try to tell the truth. You don't try to tell the truth. You either tell the truth or you lie. And when you trying to tell the truth means you lie sometimes,
My job is to get people to think. It's not to get people to reinforce their political, ideology. They can stay at home and watch, Stephen Colbert, or they can watch Jimmy Fallon if they want to do that, or Jimmy Kimmel, and then they'll tell you what to think, and then go ahead and think that, because they're not going to ask you to think for yourself.
Well, they wanted you to apologize for cultural appropriation.
Well, cultural appropriation is a really interesting idea. I mean, the whole idea about different cultures and traveling was to find different things. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, when he went to Europe to come up with ideas for this new country called the United States of America, he had a little red book with him, and he would walk around and go, "We don't want that. That would be good. You know what? Too many statues here." We didn't listen to him on that one, but and he said, "No, let's definitely have some sort of grid system, because London is just not working, because it was really set up and then grew. And then the next thing you know, horses have to go here, and then there's horses have to go here." And he said, "Well, let's come up with a better system than this." And so what he did was cultural appropriation. He took what he wanted and more importantly, what he didn't want from different cultures. Like, I mean, I would love to take, we take couscous from the Middle East and stuff from Saudi Arabia, but we certainly don't want to have women not be able to be exposed, just their eyeballs. Let's not bring that here. I don't want that here. So culturally, we take things from different cultures. Like from Italy, let's take pasta. From Mexico, I took my wife. I have these different cultures. I have these different things and so the idea of cultural appropriation is just another way to stifle people and to attack people. Interesting. There was a guy who's the YouTuber. I don't know if it was Jake Paul or Logan Paul. I don't really know. I mean, I'm an older gentleman at this point. And he got accused of cultural appropriation. And he's, for being on YouTube because he was wearing a Japanese kimono. And he says, that's cultural appropriation. Really? Tell that to the Japanese guy who was selling those kimonos to make money and to make a living from tourists, who would decide, hey, that's a cool thing to wear. Instead of a robe, it's more colorful. It has a design on it. But that's cultural appropriation. So I guess what, cultural appropriation is to share what's the best parts of other people's cultures, and to, God delights in variety, and your culture. The thing about America is so beautiful is I can go out and have Indian food tonight. I can have Thai food tonight. I can have Chinese food. I can get sushi if I want. And it's because of this beautiful culture that we have, is we have just this beautiful melting pot of America. And that is a wonderful thing. And it's about different cultures if you want to make a really good pasta, you're going to let it stew for a while. You're going to have different ingredients into it. You're going to have this and that. And you have in America, that's why people are trying to get here from all over the world. And unfortunately, just sneaking in by the tens of thousands, because America offers opportunity. America has a particular, our founding fathers never said this is going to be a perfect society. It was going to be a better society. It was going to be created under God. All men created equal, but it was under God. Because it had to be for something, not just for some system of thought or some political party or something, but it was about something higher than themselves, a supreme being, so that you had you're not going to give you and tell you how to live your life, but they give you a piece of a map, a big enough piece, so you can live a decent life. And that's what America offers. And that's why it's the beacon call for freedom still all over the world. Is it perfect? No. But what has to happen is you have to have the right balance in our system. It is. If you have too much chaos, then it all falls apart. Then the system does not work. It can't just be chaos. So you have to have. But if you have complete control, then you have tyranny. And so you have to have the certain amount, and that's always going to be the struggle. And that's the struggle now, and that should continue to be the struggle. And then we make that delineating line. It isn't a line that stays there. The same thing with comedy. It's not a line. It is like the tides. And I talk about it in my new book, You Can Do It, Speak Your Mind America, is that with the culture, it is a tide and it ebbs and flows. And so the cultural norms that were, from 50, 60 years ago are different now than they were then. And I think there is a cultural low tide and there's a cultural high tide. And the cultural low tide would be when there's more authoritarianism, which, kind of happened into the Republican administration of the early 80s. But it wasn't anywhere near what's happening now, the cultural regression and low tide. There was a high tide of the 90s and early 2000s, and there's another cultural authoritarian low tide that's happening now with this illiberal, crazy ideology that's, trying to attack the West. And I talk about it in my book at great length, and we give, a lot of great research to it. And I suggest to all the PragerU people to go buy my book. You Can Do It, Speak Your Mind, America. And it's a good book. Even a better book is Douglas Murray's War in the West and Andrew Doyle's The New Puritans. They're better books than mine. But if you can't get those, get mine. Well, the whole point of being an actor, I always thought, was playing other people. The better you can play other people, the harder it is, then the better you are. And so, playing people that are totally different than you. I mean, I don't have to join the Navy to be to be, somebody who's on a submarine. And I'll just do the movie, and I'll do a little bit of research, not much. And then, when I had to play a Palestinian in Zohan, the thing I was really proud about is I worked for months on that. I worked because you have to get the low voice and you get the high voice. And then John Turturro and I, we worked on and did a whole scene in Arabic, but it didn't even make the cut because I had lived with this other actor who was Palestinian, and I'm there with him. And it wasn't disrespectful. What it was what I thought was a good acting performance, and it made people laugh. And I think it was kind of fun because my favorite part of that is my mom didn't even know that I was in the movie. You said you were in the movie. I watched it. I didn't see you. Where were you? And I said, I was like, no, you were not. And so that always makes me, fun. Fun for Adam was like, he would try to hide me as like Prince Habibu in a movie so people wouldn't even know. And that's what's fun, is to be other people. That's what your job is as an actor. It's not just to play yourself. There's two kinds of actors, really. There's an actor who you do one version of yourself. You're not going to see a different. It's Humphrey Bogart's going to be in this, and he's going to be basically Humphrey Bogart, whether he's the Maltese Falcon or whether he's the African Queen. He's a version of himself. And then you have really strong personalities like that, and you have like Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is always going to be Clint Eastwood in anything he does. And then you have, guys like Al Pacino who can play wildly different parts. And what fun is in acting is to be able to do that. To me, I want to play somebody who's nothing like me at all, who's a different nationality than me. And, is that offensive? Well, I think if you do it good, no. I think Robert Downey Jr. played a black guy and got nominated for Best Supporting Actor when the Academy Award actually meant something. That's like, because he did it great. How fun is that? Why not? When I make fun of or play different, different people, it's because I think that's what's fun. I think that's what's funny.
Suki, come look at it. Mishima. Suki, stupid cow. I say, hey, may I help you?
The idea that you got to only stay in your lane. What is that lane? Who decided that lane? Can I make fun of Asians and white people? I remember like the New York Times called my performance in Sony Pictures 50 First Dates racist. And I went like, and then the reporter found out that I'm half Asian and called me personally to apologize, which I thought was nice. But the reprint wasn't in big letters in the entertainment section. It's like, Rob Schneider's Asian. It was always like in the editorial thing, like in the apologies. Rob Schneider's Asian. And it's like, hey, make it just as big, your apology. But the fact of the matter is, people can make fun of other people and then let people decide. Is it too much or is it not enough? Let the audience decide. The audience is pretty good. They'll let you know if it's funny. They'll let you know if it's too much. But people deciding for other people. And my friend John Cleese, my comedic hero from Monty Python, The Life of Brian, and Faulty Towers. I mean, he's a real comedic genius. The greatest British comedy of all time, voted many, many times, is The Life of Brian. And this is the guy who wrote most of it. John Cleese, he said, I don't believe that the most sensitive members of society should get to decide what everybody else gets to listen to and watch. Let us, are you going to chew my food for me as well? He doesn't say that part, but I do.
Do you have a favorite Monty Python skit?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, Monty Python was the high watermark of comedy of the 20th century. Why? Because it was silly, but it was also brilliant. And it just destroyed, it destroyed the comedy that led before it. And really did, it was the Beatles of comedy. As the Beatles, changed music, they changed comedy. And they said everything, and silly was king. So even though whatever I talk about in my act, I'm not trying to be bombastic. I'm not trying to make points. I'm just saying that there happens to be a lot of things you can make fun of now. And I try to do it in the silliest way that I can, because that's the stuff that made me laugh. Monty Python. I mean, that stuff, the sillier, the better. The fish slapping dance. It's just absolutely silly. You show that to kids, you show it to adults, and they both pee themselves laughing. Why? Because it's so stupid, but it's wonderful. It's this wonderful absurdist progression of nonsense. But then also in that nonsense is sense, Because what that nonsense is doing is that questioning, maybe your sense is based on some fallacy that needs to be questioned. And that's why comedy is so essential. Good comedy. It must make you question your sense may be nonsense. And that's never been more evident than the last few years of authoritarianism worldwide. So that's why I think the comedians, and the good ones, and there's a lot of them now, in a lot of ways, the comedians have usurped rock and roll. Because, the rock and roll was, in the 60s, was questioning culture and making people ask questions. And it's interesting how you have the predominant, authoritarian Democrats who were I remember the Democrats in the 70s are like, question everything. You got to question the man. Don't just take the government. Government lies. And now it's completely shifted over to don't question anything. Do exactly what the government says. The government has your best interest in mind. If you think in 2024 that the government has your best interest in mind, you are not doing your job to protect yourself and your family. You're not paying attention.
What do you think about SNL?
SNL is the best description of Saturday Night Live I'd ever heard, and it's still true today. It's a really good restaurant in a fantastic location. And so, I'm very, I love that show, and I'm very hopeful that show will continue to do what it's always done at its best. Comment on what's happening in the culture, regardless of who's in charge. And they are, and they're returning to that roots. And I'm very happy to see them do that. And it's tough because any institution is going to be corruptible, and any institution of a university, and as individuals, I mean, it's tough because, what happens in our society and what has happened is people using and abusing the goodwill of Americans, good people. And if they're screaming about something, they're screaming as but then they must be right because they're screaming. They're certainly upset. So, but in the effort to calm these irrational people, we've allowed liberties to be taken away. And that cannot be allowed. No matter the most irrational person cannot take away the liberties of other people so that they can feel better and more calm. And that is the reason why I'm here today, because there are very few outlets. PragerU is one of them that espouses that important issue.
Do you have thoughts on what happened with Shane Gillis? We're kind of happy that now he's back.
Well, Shane, the thing about Saturday Night Live, what about comedy is this: the cream rises to the top. If you got on Saturday Night Live, you're the best of the best. You're getting Shane Gillis. I'm one of the, maybe me and Norm Macdonald were the only guys who stood up for him when he got hired and then quickly unhired from a joke that missed on a podcast, making fun of an Asian. And as the first Asian ever on Saturday Night Live, I still stood up for him. And I said, hey, that's wrong to get rid of him. And he's a guy that's perfect for that show because they need him. He could play a fireman, a policeman. He could play a normal dude. And he's really funny. And he's young and funny. But however, the fact of the matter was that they, at that time, they were swept up in this authoritarianism. And like any other institution, I think they got wrapped up in it and they made a mistake. But they acknowledged their mistake. And I would say I'm very proud that great institution, Saturday Night Live, and that comedy kingmaker genius, Lorne Michaels, had him come back and host. They fired Norm Macdonald too. And what did Lorne Michaels do? He brought him back to host. And that was tough because there was a lot of pressure at the time from the head honchos at NBC to get rid of Norm. And there was such pressure that they had to. They couldn't keep him. But they brought him back to host. So I will say that the cream rises to the top, and he's a really funny comedian, and you can't keep a funny guy down. Sorry, you can't. Maybe he doesn't have the same ideology as you, but if he's going to make a room full of people laugh, they're going to tell their friends, and that room's going to get bigger, and then that room's going to get bigger, and then he goes on YouTube, and then 100 million people laugh. Sorry, you can't keep him down. You're going to eventually have to go, okay, let him host.
You're optimistic, I guess.
You have to be. This is the greatest country in the history of the world. We have the greatest. My mother came from, survived the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. And I grew up with her stories about how difficult it was for her. She had to they starved to get food. She took bed sheets with her mother and her sisters, and they made little designs on them and then walked for days to trade those, old worn down bed sheets, which turned into very comfortable pajamas. So they would take these old pajamas and trade them to the farmers, for camote, which is sweet potatoes. And that's how they survived. She found money in a cave. That's what paid, for her and her sisters to go to school. Because they found it that the Japanese in the cave. So it's that was what I grew up with. So I'm sorry, America, you're not having to find money in a cave that the Japanese buried. You can come to this country from any country in the world, from any nationality, any race. You come here, you work your ass off, you have an opportunity. You could be successful. You could be a millionaire. And unfortunately, the American dream, people seem to forget what that was. It was wasn't being a millionaire, winning the lottery or whatever, or being the winner on the Bachelorette. No, owning your own home, getting a piece of the American dream, a piece of land, putting a home there, getting your own home you paid for, that you can live your own little castle. That was your dream. And that dream needs to be maintained at all costs. And so people that would want to take away that dream, be careful. And I would just tell to all the people that are watching, the most important thing is the only thing they can manipulate you with, the only thing they can do is make you fearful. If you are not fearful, if you don't fall into the fear trap, which is all propaganda, and anytime they're trying to make you scared about something, wake up. They're using you. They're trying to get something. They're trying to silence you. They're trying to take away your land. They're trying to take away your ability to drive or cook with your stoves because of some existential thing. So keep cooking the way you want to. Keep driving your cars that you choose to. And don't let the government make these decisions for how you're going to live your life, because they don't have your best interests in mind. And don't let them scare you, because fear is the only way they can get us to decide to stay in your homes, close your businesses. Why? Because it's scary out there. Stay home. Don't give in to that, and don't ever let them lock you down again. Don't ever close your business for them. And thank God we're a republic. Thank God there's different states that didn't put up with it. Because when they tried to close us down, when they did successfully do it, I would travel around to any place that was still open, even if they had 50 seats in a normal place that would sit hundreds. I'll go there and I'll do 20 shows. I did 14 shows to half, because they only let half capacity in the club in Nashville. And I said, okay, I'll do as many shows as people want to come. So I did 14 shows in a row. But I do think people are waking up. I hope they are. I want everybody in America to do well. I don't have a ideological bent. I don't want just somebody who belongs to a political party that I think is going off the deep end intellectually and morally and ethically and in a tyrannical fashion. I don't wish them unwell. I hope that they come back to a reasonable position so that they can continue to advance what made this country so special and unique. Not perfect, but special and unique. Opportunity and freedom of thought. And that's why free speech is so essential. My new book, Speak Your Mind Freely, You Can Do It. We really talk about that. That's why it's so essential. That's why it's our First Amendment. That's why the right for people to assemble and petition grievances of their government. We have to assemble so you can go, this seems crazy, right? Yeah, it seems crazy. And that's why at the end of the day, because we have a technological grip, what's happening now, there is a vice grip of thought and censorship from Google. They will suppress any conservative ideas. They'll suppress this video for sure and its algorithm. But, so the one thing they can't take away from us is our ability to meet with other people and find common ground. But we'll work with the people who have, on the things that you do agree with. Let's get together and let's work together, because this is, when they say American exceptionalism, I would say, I would just say it's exceptional, and it is. But I would just say that, every other country has that opportunity. But what's happening in other countries is in Scotland, Ireland, in Canada with that the great northern dictator Trudeau, is that they are squeezing and silencing people. And our free speech is our most powerful weapon because it gives us the opportunity to have dissent. And we have to get together. And that's why assembly is so important, because they can squeeze, they can subvert free speech on the internet now, on different websites, absolutely. But they can't stop us from doing our First Amendment rights, which is assembling. That's why COVID was so, to me, evil. Because what it was like, hey, we don't want them even to get together because then they'll start questioning this stuff. And it was a vice grip. But you can do it. Speak your mind, America. Speak freely. Don't be afraid. Don't fall into the fear. You have to express how you feel. And that means debate, and be open to debate. Be open to challenge yourself and challenge others so that we can come up with better ideas, so that this country that's always evolving, that's always moving forward, can continue. Sometimes it'll regress, and that's when you need to speak your mind so we can move it forward. And maybe in some ways moving too forward too much. And so you need to come back to a place of reason and a place of freedom of expression. And that's going to be with debate and dissension. And so that's really what it is. That's why it's got to be all speech. You have to be for the most vile, horrible speech that makes you vomit. You have to protect that too. Or you're not for free speech. You got to take all of it or none of it. And then let the people decide. Because also when you're taking this vile, ugly speech, then what you're able to do is you can expose it for what it is. So a normal, rational thinking person go, well, that's awful. And they go, you shouldn't say something like that, or said, that really is awful. But shutting them down and eliminating them from saying it just creates something. It doesn't go away. It doesn't disperse. It just becomes it just becomes this boil of hate and anger. And let it come out. Let's expose it for what it is. I mean, that's why the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties, used to be a good, decent organization that I thought was, that used to espouse what the judicial system was at its finest. Civil liberties for everybody. And when they went to Skokie and wanted to protect the rights of of rational thinking people, Nazis, their right to parade, that was important because neo-Nazis, their ideology needs to be exposed for what it is. And if we shut them up, then they could shut up other people. And so it doesn't mean we accept these ideas. To the contrary, let's expose these ideas. Let them speak. And then let's contrast that with love. Let's contrast that with acceptance, for everyone. And that's why it's so important to continue to protect free speech, which is under great assault. There's been nothing like it in my lifetime, as it is right now. And so it's important that we continue to push forward.
Final message to those who love comedy or comedians. Just let's wrap it up. What is your final?
Well, it's never been a better time for comedy, because you have to have something to rail against, and you have to have the audience in a place where they're at now. Confused. I don't know what. It's just crazy stuff. I think it's crazy. Is it crazy? I'm being told it's not crazy to go see comedy. It is crazy. You see, we can all laugh at this stuff. And it is. And luckily there are great comedians that are out there. You have the amazing comedians who are able to keep people laughing and just go out and have a good laugh and then take those laughs and tell them at work and let everybody know that, hey, this is the greatest experiment in the history of the world. And free speech is what allows this. So just keep enjoying it and keep fighting for it, because that's what's going to, it's the people. If the people decide, and if something is so ridiculous and tyrannical and authoritarian, the way to knock it down is to laugh at it. Once you become something that is ridiculed, it will collapse. And what you're seeing now is the collapse of authoritarian idiocy, an ideology that cannot hold up that can't hold up to dissent, that can't hold up in an argument. So they have to just shout you down, and it won't work because Americans are smarter than that, and we've had enough of it. So thank you, but I'm going to keep speaking my mind. You're going to have to deal with it.